So, I have a lot of discussions about Marvel. The MCU has been the big ticket for the past 10 years, and with Endgame recently wrapping up a decade of on-screen storytelling, it's easy to see why. What's not so easy to see is my answer to one of the most commonly asked questions among friends. Who's your favorite superhero? Because, well, my answer's Hawkeye. Now I know what you're thinking. Hawkeye? Really? Out of everybody, that's the one you're gonna go with? And if you just know Hawkeye from the MCU, I get it. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, the guy has less than an hour of screen time in 10 years. Sure, he's a good shot, he's friends with Black Widow, rip, and he's great at successfully rolling away from explosions, but your favorite? Why? And that right there, the why question, is the reason I'm doing this video. Why should you give a hoot about the bow and arrow guy? Well, let me give you one reason right up front. Because the Marvel Cinematic Universe robbed this character blind. He's almost the exact opposite from the tight-lipped, straight-laced family man we see in the movies. P.S. Jeremy, you did a great job with almost nothing. No offense to you. And it's a crying shame. There was such a big opportunity to add another dynamic to the original Avengers lineup that doesn't currently exist, and Disney blew it. When it came to Hawkeye, they had no idea what to do with him. It was like they couldn't fathom how to keep a non-superpowered member of the team toe-to-toe with the rest of the group. I often argue they had similar issues with Black Widow, but that's another video entirely. What I want to do is introduce you to the Hawkeye I know. The guy straight from the minds of Stan Lee and Don Heck. I want to show you what you're missing out on, and why, once I got to know him, I realized just how little work the MCU put into him. So sit back, relax, and let me spin you a yarn about the greatest marksman in the world. Clinton Francis Barton. Yeah, that's his name. It's terrible, I know. Was born in Iowa, the second son of Harold and Edith Barton. His dad, who ran the local butcher shop, was wildly abusive and a raging alcoholic, taking out his aggression on Clint, his older brother Barney, yet another terrible name, and their mother. The boys were subjected to verbal and psychological abuse from both parents. Edith, probably emotionally defeated by her husband's addiction, never interfered, interjected, or stood up for her children. It got so bad at one point that Harold beat Clint until he was deaf. That's right. He hit his kid so hard it burst his eardrums. Eventually, little Clint regained some of his hearing, but in the meantime, he picked up bits of sign language, which Barney helped facilitate. Both boys dreamed of a way out of their terrible home life. Fate was tragically happy to oblige. Harold drunk drove both him and his wife into a telephone pole, and the couple was killed instantly, leaving Clint and Barney orphaned. Now, the story has been adjusted over the years due to newer rewrites and such, but the gist of the next phase of their lives stays the same. The brothers became victims of the foster care system, going from one abusive home to the next until they'd had enough and did what most kids dream of doing. They ran away and joined the circus. Literally. To earn their keep, the Barton brothers started off doing chores and cleaning up after shows. But two of the show's performers, Trickshot and the Swordsman, took a shine to the boys and started training them to be a part of the show. Between Trickshot's archery prowess and the Swordsman's combat and acrobatic skills, Clint quickly became respected as a multifaceted act. Although his real talent was with the bow and arrow, sure, his eye for precision gave him a leg up as a knife-throwing, tightrope-walking, back-flipping combo performer. Everything was great. He had a new family with the circus folks, his mentors became father figures to him, and for the first time in his life, he really had a place to call home. But perfect didn't stay that way for long. Turns out, the Swordsman was embezzling money from the circus. Lots of money, and other performers were stealing from the towns they passed through. Hurt and disgusted, Clint confronted the Swordsman about it, and yeah, it didn't go well. They fought, the Swordsman pushed him off a tightrope, and basically, he almost died. He got really hurt and left the circus, only to realize he didn't have anywhere to go and came right back. Barney was pissed when he found out Clint left and their relationship sort of fell apart. He didn't really want to stay either, but the two of them were all they'd ever had, and he felt betrayed when Clint just up and vanished. When Clint came back to the circus, Barney went and joined the army. He pretty much gave his little brother an ultimatum and said, hey, if you want a brother, you have to join the army with me and leave all this circus stuff behind. Clint didn't show. Barney left, and that was that. Clint's life as a petty thief began. Stuck and unhappy, Clint participated in several jobs orchestrated by the circus. He robbed patrons and did generally whatever the swordsman wanted him to. I personally think it was a symptom of his abusive upbringing, that he just felt like he didn't have a choice. It was loyalty, even though he kinda hated the guy behind it all. At one point a few years later, the circus tried to burglarize a mansion, and in the chaos, Clint shot one of the people inside. As luck would have it, the victim was none other than his brother, Barney, who was working as an undercover FBI agent at the time. Mortified, Clint bowed out of the job, officially breaking from the corrupt circus, but not before Trickshot pinned Clint's shoulder to a tree with an arrow and promised to kill him if he ever came back. Not a whole lot of love lost there. Barney survived, by the way, but Clint was so shaken by the incident that I think that instigated his no-kill policy, which I'll get into later. Now a young man without any real skills, Clint found himself in a bit of a pickle. So what does he do? He joins another circus, a carnival really, on Coney Island in New York, calling himself the Amazing Hawkeye, and starts doing exactly what he was doing before, minus the crime. Much like his MCU counterpart, no one gives a crap. His act is largely ignored, and he starts getting salty about it. That's when Iron Man happened to fly over and stop a ride from crashing, and unbeknownst to him, got Clint thinking. Maybe I can take this archery stuff I'm so good at and use it for good. Stop the bad guys instead. Great idea, right? Except, in classic Clint fashion, the first time he chooses to give this hero business a shot, he gets accused of being the bad guy. See, he tries to stop some burglars from breaking into a shop, and when the police get there, all they see is this guy in a weird costume holding stolen jewelry, so whoops. He bails, the popo don't catch him, and this sort of takes the wind out of his sails. He's basically like,
oh, why am I so bad at being good?
Yeah. In walks his most enduring relationship in comic history, Natasha Romanoff, aka the Black Widow. Nat wasn't exactly a great influence on Clint in the beginning. She was still working for the Soviets, and her assignment was to try to take out Tony Stark. Pretty sure for his tech, I can't really remember, but something you have to understand about comic Clint, something the MCU completely destroyed, is that ladies are totally his kryptonite. You want to bait Clint Barton into doing something? Throw a woman in the mix. That's literally all you have to do. And Natasha spotted this a mile away. She jumped on his disillusionment like white on rice and convinced him that the only way he'd be taken seriously as a threat was to defeat Iron Man. I know. He's so easy. Clint fell head over heels for Natasha, and despite the fact that he wanted to do the right thing, he wanted to be in her good graces way more. After a very unsuccessful attempt, he wises up to her schemes, and even though he loves her, tells her he can't keep up the bad guy thing and decides to give the hero life another shot. She leaves, he's sad, it's a whole thing, but don't worry, she's coming back. Luck always sort of plays a factor in Clint's story, good or bad. And in this case, it just so happened to be the good kind, because the first guy he ends up saving is Edward Jarvis, who in the comics was Tony Stark's human butler. Jarvis buys Clint lunch, they talk it over, and Jarvis decides Clint deserves a shot at the Avengers. And he gets one. Tony gives the okay, and he gets to try out the good guy life for a change. Captain America at the time had this little group of heroes called the Kooky Quartet. I know, right? It's amazing. That consisted of Cap, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and, drumroll please, sorry, that was me, Hawkeye! This phase of Clint's life is pretty essential to establish one very important thing. His loyalty to Captain America is almost instantaneous. and completely tumultuous. What I mean to say is that under the layers of crankiness and sarcastic comments. Oh yeah, by the way, comic book Clint is super sassy. He really sees Cap as a father figure, but because of that gives him a shipload of crap. He thinks he's better than his teammates and that Cap is past his prime and an old cornball. Yeah, those are his words, not mine. And it takes him a lot of Cap backlash to sort of find his place. But through it all, he maintains this back-talking sass master relationship with Cap and still becomes a better person for it. That relationship lasts pretty much from then on out. He likes calling Cap Gramps and stuff like that. It's pretty great. Ironically, one of the Kooky Quartet's assignments was to stop, told you she'd be coming back, Black Widow, who had been tasked to take out the Avengers. Clint jumps at the opportunity and says he'll take care of it, and because she secretly really liked Clint but couldn't really bring herself to sort all that out, Natasha confesses that she has been severely brainwashed by the Soviets. Clint immediately steps in and vouches for her, bringing up his own sordid past as an example, and after some thinking, the Avengers give her a pass. She gets to join the team. Yay, buddies! Now, I could talk about Clint's escapades for days, but I'm gonna sum up the next part in fast-paced bullet points so you get the gist, okay? Ready? You ready? You sure? Here we go! Clint and Nat hook up again. Clint drops Hawkeye and becomes Goliath. Clint fights Egghead, who uses Barney's brother as an accomplice. Barney dies in Clint's arms. Yeah, I was really sad. Nat dumps him. Skrulls! Nat starts dating Daredevil, Clint is pissed, and leaves the Avengers. Clint gets trapped in the past and gets to be a cowboy for a while. Clint comes back. Clint gets a job at Cross Tech Enterprises. Yeah, that Cross. And makes out with Deathbird. Cap and Tony team up to get Clint back into the Avengers. He splits his time between them and Cross. Clint puts a stop to his old circus of crime. Clint kills Egghead to avenge Barney. It's one of the only times he kills people, by the way, but we'll get back to that. And that's when he meets a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent named Bobby Morse, codename Mockingbird, who he marries. Yeah, you heard me right. Clint does get married, but not to some rando named Laura, to the crazy talented baton lady from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They meet, it's a whirlwind romance, they get married in like 2 weeks right after he becomes temporarily deaf again. Yeah, it's a whole thing. But yeah, it really pissed me off to find out Clint was going to have a family in the MCU, especially because of the parade of never-ending love interests he has in the comics. But to not let his wife be Bobby Morse, the only one he ever married, took 10 years off my life. Anyway, I'll climb down from my soapbox now. Another thing the MCU really killed any chance for is Clint as a leader. After he got married, Clint got his own branch of the Avengers called the West Coast Avengers. And he led them for a long time, successfully, without supervision. Who knew, right? Not you, because Disney. Anyway, another soapbox. One mission goes really wrong, and Bobby ends up being brainwashed into thinking that she's the wife of this villain called the Phantom Rider. And the writer goes along with it all the way, if you get what I'm saying. It's gross and not good. It's actually rape. So when she snaps out of it and gets the opportunity to either save the guy or let him die, she opts to let him die. Clint, who as a rule doesn't kill people, and once again, I'll get back to that, couldn't believe she let the guy die, and because there was just so much there to unpack, the couple split up. I can't really say that I agree with Clint on this. The story is definitely a product of its time. Pretty sure this was in the mid-70s, maybe early 80s, so different world, different writers, but it happened. And while it was painful, the two managed to push past it and start trying to get their marriage off the rocks. And then Bobby dies, and he misses the chance to fix things, and it F's him up. Some timeline-altering thing happens with a villain called Onslaught that would take too long to talk about, but in true Marvel fashion, the whole universe gets a reset, and when it does, Clint gets his hearing back. He ponies up and rejoins the main Avengers roster before breaking off to put together a group of ex-criminals that he wanted to give a second chance. In came the Thunderbolts! It was a real boost for Hawkeye, who got to step into his leader boots again. He had a thing with a member called Moonstone during all this, by the way, so still not a family man. Anyway, The government freaks out, tells Clint he's breaking the law by aiding wanted criminals, and he tells them to screw off and throws in his lot with his group. And because of Clint's faith in them, eventually the team is pardoned and Cap takes over. This is one thing the MCU got right about Barton. He's a sucker for a good redemption arc. He loves making something out of people that don't feel they're capable of goodness. And despite the fact that I disagree with a huge portion of his portrayal in the movies, they got that part right. Moving on. Clint joins back up with the Avengers and starts up yet another tryst with a fellow female Avenger. Are you starting to see why I couldn't understand the family part now? Yeah. With the Wasp. It's a for fun relationship that doesn't really have much meat to it, except that it really pisses off Hank Pym. But it does have one unexpected side effect. Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, having observed Janet's new relationship with Clint, starts wishing for a family of her own. She's in love with the Vision, who can't biologically have children. Already in an unstable place, she decides to literally take reality into her own hands. And chaos erupts. Scott Lang and the Vision are suddenly killed on the front lawn of the Avengers Mansion. She-Hulk freaks out and nearly kills Captain America. No one knows what's going on. Ultron gets mentioned as a suspect. And then a Kree warship shows up, set on invasion. It's Avengers D-Day. A huge battle ensues. All of the Avengers are there trying to stop the madness. Clint holds his own. And then it happened. A Kree soldier shoots him in the back. Yeah, I know. I freaked. And I was right to. The hit ignited his quiver and his trick arrows in the process. Too wounded to free himself, knowing he's got seconds to live, he makes his choice. Clint jumps a Kree speeder, pilots it into the warship, and explodes on impact. Clint dies. My boy dies. He is deaded. And the worst part is, none of it was what it seemed. It was Wanda manipulating reality that caused everything to happen. All the dead Avengers, on her. To add insult to injury, the second Clint bit the dust, she put him in an alternate reality where he was a happy little Avengers boy, still married to Bobby. It was freaking sad, okay? I wasn't pleased. But eventually, because his life is never that perfect, Clint sniffed out the truth and confronted her, and she killed him again. Jeez. Eventually, reality got ironed out, and when it did, Clint was brought back to life, which really screwed him up mentally. Completely disoriented and with a newly broken sense of reality, he opted to stay in hiding and let the whole Hawkeye thing die. He finds Dr. Strange, who comes alongside him and helps him start sorting out the facts. You know, because he was dead and all. As an act of closure, Clint seeks out Wanda, only to find her with no memory of what she did. And surprise, they hook up. What on earth were you thinking, Joss? Anyway, there's an arc where Cap is thought to be dead and the word starts going around that Clint is alive. Knowing Clint's admiration of good old Steve Rogers, Stark saves the shield. Yeah, the strong and brave shield. And offers to make Clint Captain America. Having put aside the whole costume hero thing, he thinks it over. And it's while he's doing this that he gets wind of the fact that someone has been going around calling themselves Hawkeye. He is not too happy about this. So what does he do? Dresses up as Cap and confronts the one responsible. Turns out, it was a young woman named Kate Bishop, who adopted the Hawkeye mantle as a tribute to her favorite hero. Surprised, he lets her off the hook and decides to decline the offer of Cap's mantle. He just didn't feel worthy. Wanting to disappear and to give the new Hawkeye a chance to prove herself, Clint takes on the identity of Ronin, a martial artist vigilante that we got to see for all of 10 seconds in Endgame. What on earth was that? You build up a new identity and all we get is a speed fight in the rain and then that's it? Come on, guys! Lightning round bullet pointing part 2. Brace yourselves. Ready, go! Skrulls, the sequel. Bobby, who never died but was captured by the Skrulls, returns! Clint and Bobby get back together. Norman Osborn, yeah, that guy, starts a group of evil Avengers. Osborn captures and tortures Clint for info on the Avengers. Clint is freed by the real Avengers. Clint picks up his old mantle again and calls himself Hawkeye. Bobby starts a counter-terrorism organization. Clint and Bobby split. Clint still does not like her methods when dealing with criminals. Clint, Bobby, and Natasha go on a mission where Nat kills her husband, who is a robot. It's weird, but it's a good one. Read it. Clint goes blind and fights his brother, Barney, who was brought back and brainwashed. And wins, obviously. You don't need eyes to be Hawkeye, come on, man. Clint dates Spider-Woman. Steve tricks Clint into a mission to see if he can still lead. He can. Clint leads the Secret Avengers for a hot second, but when a mission goes bad, he, surprise, leaves. Again. Shocker. Clint takes the Young Avengers, including Kate Bishop, under his wing and sort of helps them train. Clint buys his apartment building and fights off thugs with Kate Bishop. He loses his hearing again and has to, as of current canon, wear hearing aids to hear, and still speaks sign language. So, ultimately, why the dissertation? Well, I want to point out some recurring themes about who Clint Barton is and some missed opportunities by the MCU. For starters, let's talk about his past. He doesn't have one. Not in the MCU anyway. And I get it, he's a side character. But we all know where Natasha came from. She was trained in the KGB's Red Room program, sent out as a killer, stopped and saved by, you guessed it, Hawkeye, and started working at S.H.I.E.L.D. What do we know about Clint's life in the MCU? Well, he has a family, and at some point started working for S.H.I.E.L.D., but that's it. We have no idea how he started working for S.H.I.E.L.D., why he chose a bow and arrow as a primary weapon of choice. We don't know anything. He's just a dude that Fury assigned to watch a science room in the first Avengers movie. He's the guy that got brainwashed and made Natasha feel things for a moment. That's it! That's the guy! But we have no idea where he came from. The only other mention of his past is in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where Bobby, I'm still miffed about that, by the way, mentions that someone almost killed him on a mission, which was impressive because of how skilled he's supposed to be, but we don't get to see it. We just get snippets and conversations, not actual screen participation. It's lazy. And it's how his character got wasted. Speaking of the ladies, let's just do a quick rundown of some of his escapades. Natasha, Bobby, Deathbird, Moonstone, The Wasp, She-Hulk, Spider-Woman, Wanda Maximoff, a woman known as Cherry, and the Black Canary. You heard me right. DC did a crossover and Hawkeye stole the Green Arrow's girl. If that doesn't give him points as to who's better, I don't know what does. All that to say, Clint gets around. It's part of his character. He likes ladies. He's not one to be shy about it, and while he's not particularly sleazy or gross, because I would not be able to stand him if he was, he bounces around from one romantic partner to the next. He's not good at love, as attested by the hands-down best Hawkeye series of all time by Matt Fraction. He's not good at commitment. He tries really hard, but misses the mark. It's one of the few places he actually does miss in his life. He just can't reach out to that kind of consistency. And that's his defining identity in the MCU. The family man, the stable one. The guy who has it all together with a normal life, wife and kids just waiting for him to come home to his nice little farm when he gets home from avenging. It's just not Clint. Not at all. I think comic Clint would be shocked to find out that another version of himself actually got it right for a change. And he'd probably want to know the secret because the guy can't land a partner to save his life. And sure, you may have seen Clint's family floating around in comics somewhere on the interwebs, but let me be clear. The Clint's family arc is an AU. Not canon, and so disliked it was discontinued. It had Clint Barton, the murderous assassin, lose his family to a home invasion orchestrated by Black Widow, who kills his entire family. He then hunts her down and kills her while she's in the hospital from another incident, and the whole thing is just gross and wrong. It was the most out-of-character thing I've ever seen in my life. In short, I guess I just don't understand the route the MCU took in regards to his weird family, unless they were erasing the possible romantic interest he would have had in Black Widow, one of his most consistently returned to love plots in the comics. It's canon. All the time. But sun was getting real low, so they had to think of something. Another thing is his no-kill policy, which I've been promising to get back around to. In the comics, Clint has a thing where he doesn't shoot to kill. That's not to say he hasn't killed people. but the amount of individuals he's taken out accidentally or otherwise, I can count on one hand. He just doesn't see the need. And I think it ties in beautifully with his constant mission to fight for the little guy and the underdog. He knows on a personal level that sometimes the bad guy is just a good guy trying to get by. He knows not all criminals want to be that way, so killing them just doesn't make sense. And when you're Hawkeye, you don't have to. There are a million ways to stop someone without taking their life. An arrow to the eye or knee seems to be a favorite of his, for example. But MCU Clint doesn't share that policy. All you have to do is search Hawkeye kill count on YouTube to know what I'm talking about. He doesn't hesitate to take life in the movies. Now, I'll give the House of Mouse partial credit here. One of the only redeeming qualities about Clint in the MCU is that he seems to be the Avengers recruiting scout. He's the one who brings Nat to S.H.I.E.L.D. and talks Wanda out of a breakdown. He's seen in the background helping people out of a bus and moving civilians to safety. One of my favorite scenes in the disappointment that was Age of Ultron was Clint reaching safety in the film's finale, only to spot an injured little boy. Thanks to Jeremy Renner's superb subtlety, you can see that he clearly knows there's a good chance he's giving up his life to go get that kid, but he shakes it off, runs back into the mess, and does it anyway. It ends up being a plot device to pointlessly kill off an Avenger we had just met, but it's a great moment, and he doesn't get off unscathed. He's injured in the onslaught, but sets it aside, gets the boy to safety, and waves off the medic so they can help people around him. That's the guy I know and love. And I wish they had given him more opportunities to demonstrate that side of him. Clint will do whatever he can do. That isn't always everything, like stopping a falling building or flying through the air, but it's saving a life at the risk of your own. It's going to the limits of your very fallible human strength and doing the right thing. The MCU tried its darndest to demonstrate that with the very little screen time they gave the character, but they still made him an assassin. That was weird to me. And I'm pretty sure Comic Clint would tell his MCU counterpart to take it easy on the hit count. I don't know. All of this might not change your mind on Hawkeye being a worthy member of the original MCU Avengers lineup, and I once again get that. He was clearly supposed to die in Endgame, and it would have given his character arc some meaning, because he has literally no valuable place as a team member thus far. And that's from me. I love the guy. From where I'm standing, though, he's just fought a little bit and then took a bunch of vacations, only in time to watch his best friend, and arguably, in the MCU anyway, his platonic soulmate die for no reason. It's cheap. It's a waste of narrative resources. And it makes me sad, to be honest. For me, Hawkeye is the guy who shouldn't be there. That part doesn't change no matter how you slice it. He doesn't have powers. He doesn't have a healing factor. He just shoots his bow and gets the job done to the best of his ability, which isn't as much as some. He came from nothing, worked to become more than what he was told he could be, made some mistakes, learned from them, invited people who wouldn't have a second chance to join him in his own. He takes physical beatings constantly and doesn't just hop back from them. But he still goes out at the end of the day, peels his ass off the sofa, and does whatever he can to help those around him, because that's Hawkeye. He's special because he's not. He sees a need and fills it. He leaves, sure, but he always comes back. He's snarky and likes to play dumb. But I think it was Black Widow who called him out and said he only acts that way so he can avoid responsibility, which he knew people would place on him if they took him seriously. And she's not wrong. He's been a criminal, a circus act, a husband, a hero. And we, the audience of the MCU, will never know that. So I'm putting this out there, because somebody has to say it. Hawkeye is a dynamic character with a rich story potential that was completely wasted by Big Mouse & Co. I hope that the new Hawkeye TV series sheds some light on some of the potential stories I've mentioned. At the very least, they gotta give him a dog, right? Anyway, that's why Hawkeye is my favorite Avenger. Because he's like me. He's not a superhero, he's just a guy, doing whatever he can to do good in this world. And that version of good is pretty simple. looking out for the people around you, offering a second chance, being willing to keep going or taking the hit, even if it costs you to do the right thing by others. That's my guy. And maybe after watching this, that's your guy too.